last time you were planning is it a kayak?
Yep.
Down the Fitzroy River?
Yeah, 12 months ago I led a team of 11 environmental spokespeople and whitewater professionals down the Fitzroy. And the Fitzroy is the highest volume river in Australia. And we spent 23 days travelling down the river with a team of people from all over the world. So I'm about to head back there again now, but this time I'm going alone.
You're going alone, and probably for good reason. Tell us what condition the Fitzroy River was in last year.
Last year, unfortunately, we had some of the driest wet season on record, except for this year's shaping up to be a really, really wet season, and we just had a big flood went down there about a week ago.
Just to put that in perspective, Finey, this, as Lachie said, this is the highest volume river in Australia, and it's one of the highest volume rivers in the world. Lachie, is that right, isn't it?
Yep.
And if you can compare it to another river in the world, can you do that?
It's about 21 times the flow of the Colorado River, which flows straight through the middle of the Grand Canyon in the States, and it's much higher volume than the Nile and the Zambezi in Africa when in flood this time of year.
So the Colorado River is famed almost for people getting in, doing some white watering down the Colorado River, and famous scenes of plenty of water flowing and plenty of action.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is 21 times that in full flow.
Yep.
And also, obviously, Lachie's going solo now. It's, I believe, anyway, from my knowledge, you can count on one hand, the amount of times that a river of this size has been done solo. How do you feel just before you go into that, Lachie?
I'm really excited. It's a progressive step for my paddling and my expeditions. It's my third trip to the Kimberley area. The first trip I was quite nervous getting that far into the wilderness, and then the following year I led 11 there. So it just seems like a progressive step for pushing my own comfort level and heading out there. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, but I'm excited as well, so I'm really looking forward to it. It's
a solo expedition down the river. Do you have any support people on the banks?
No support. So I'll be by myself from when I get dropped at the airport in Tullamarine, fly up to Broome, catch a plane to Derby, send myself out to a remote station with the mail and all the supplies because all the roads are cut off this time of year, and then I got about 400 kilometres paddle back to the road.
And what is the turnaround time if something did go wrong? And when I say something go wrong, we're not talking about the worst, but let's say you received an injury. What you're doing is high impact as well as high difficulty. So let's say you threw a shoulder out, and what is the turnaround time? How quickly can they get you out of there if that happens?
It all depends on the area and how quickly I can get to my emergency beacons and stuff like that. But it could be anywhere. It could be above days if they don't know my exact location. And what happens a lot this time of year is the ground's saturated, so it's quite hard for helicopters to land because there's just so much water soaked into the ground. So,
hey Lachie, how far apart are these beacons you're talking about?
Well, I carry along with me a sat phone and another thing called a Spot Me. And what happens is I press a button and it will send a message to the internet, so you can look online and you can see the progress I've done throughout the day. And then there's another button, like an emergency red button. Press that and they'll send out a chopper straight away if I need help.
Okay, that's great.
Yep.
I'm excited listening to this. This is wonderful.
So, Lachie, will you be carrying those on your person or in your boat? I mean, if you were to come separated from your kayak, what would happen there?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll separate my two communication sources. So I'll have one in my kayak. So if I lose my kayak, I'll still have one on my persons. And if for some reason a bit of my equipment's lost on the river and I can get access to my kayak, I'll have access to the outside world in some way, shape or form.
Now, how would you like to do this? We can go through the dangers or the delights. Which one would you like to do first?
We'll go for the dangers first and then I'll put the cream on the cake.
That's it. Hey, let's get the bad stuff over first. What are the ever-present dangers, apart from being on your own and isolated? What are the dangers that the river can and will throw up?
Isolation is a major issue. I can't just walk to a road. I'm days and days away from walking to anywhere. There's also lots of venomous things on the river, as well as some crocodiles as well, which will be playing into my mind. The upper areas of the river have a lot of freshwater crocodiles, and it'd be quite common for crocs as big or bigger than me to be jumping in the water around me. But that doesn't really concern me. It's when I get lower down on the river towards Fitzroy Crossing that I'm a bit more scared about some saltwater crocodiles getting into that territory this time of year.
Locke, you were telling me a story a little bit earlier on about a situation you got in with Anthony Yap when you went on the last trip. Can you share that with the guys and the listeners?
Yeah, it was on our last day of the King Edward, and what we had to do to manoeuvre around the last waterfall, the last natural barrier between the saltwater crocodiles getting further up the river, we had to lower the rafts down into quite a big pool. And we knew that there was crocs in this area, and it was a known reported croc area for the salties. And as we were lowering it down at 5:30 in the morning, our raft managed to flip, and all our equipment was spread and rapidly travelling downstream. And at that point, Anthony and I looked at each other with terrified eyes at about 5:30 in the morning and realised we had two choices. We could climb back up, rock climb 100 feet back up a cliff and then spend days hiking out with no communications, or we could jump there and then off the waterfall and swim after the raft. And we both instantly decided, with terrified looks in our eyes, that we should swim after our equipment. And we didn't need to be an evac situation, but one of the most terrifying swims of my life. I can distinctively remember just clenching my torso, thinking that any moment I could be snapped up. But I'm going to try to stay away from that type of territory on this trip. So
we are talking. We've covered this before, but the Bear Grylls fun and fantasy and fiction that you see on TV, and it has its place. We're talking about the truth of it, the real life survivalist out in the middle of nowhere on his own v crocs. Are there any other dangers that a full flow Fitzroy River, you've described how much water goes down that river, presents in terms of, I mean, you are a highly skilled kayaker, but are there any difficulties that you personally might face when it comes to heavy white water or fast movement?
Yeah, the white water will be class 5+, so the way that white water's graded, it only goes up to 6. 6 is what you can't paddle, so if there is that volume of water, there's going to be large class 5+ sections of the river. I've spent a lot of time paddling class 5, and the rapids aren't necessarily my concern. I can get out and scout them all out, but it's still not a place for anything to be going wrong. If I swim out of my kayak, then it's a major issue, because that's my life support, that's my food, that's my shelter, that's everything for me.
Lachie, what about documenting this? Is there any way of having this on footage, or have you got anything strapped to the boat where we can see on the internet live, where you can see actually what confronts you?
Yeah, so as far as live updates go, I've got my website, and from there you'll be able to check in every day. I've got a Skype recording set up, so I can call an internet on the outside world, call a number, and that'll be recorded and posted online every day. And as far as documenting on river concerns, it's a bit of a challenge ahead of me, but I've got a few different camera sets up that I can do with some tripods and some timer release things, and I'll be making a short film out of it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's what I meant. You've got vision of it. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and there's already a confirmed feature article in Wild magazine, which is really exciting.
Lachie Carracher has joined us. We've had a lot of guests in the studio, whether it's famous footballers, famous cricketers. We spoke to Mr. Cricket, Mike Hussey, just in the last hour. And I'm looking at you, Lachie, and I'm just thinking to myself, you look normal. You look just like... Honestly, and I'm not saying what you're doing is abnormal, but you are an ultra-skilled sports person and adventurer, and I'm just sitting here in awe of you, and I'm thinking if you're walking down the street, you'd just be like another bloke. In fact, you actually look quite a lot like somebody who works here. One of our people here, Ollie, you look a lot like him, just a young bloke, yet you are taking on one of the most, something that very few people in the world can do. Am I right in saying, Paddy, that we can count on the fingers of our hand the numbers of Australians, if not people, that could complete this mission on their own?
Oh, I certainly believe so. Yeah, I mean, Lachie be the expert on that. He does hang out with a pretty talented crew of people, but he's the one taking it on solo. And Lachie, he's only just turned 22. He was 21 last year when he won our Young Adventurer of the Year for very, very good reason, for his previous exploits down the Fitzroy River. So he's got a long and illustrious adventure career ahead of him.
How many people have done it? Or again, every expedition such as this is different, isn't it? Because the water's always different. No river flows the same way twice. So how many people have done it in similar circumstances?
So Class 5 multi-days, there's only been 2 or 3 I can think of in the world. There's one quite notorious one in Uganda in Africa, and one in northern British Columbia. But it's not very common that this thing gets done, but it's a progressive part of the sport. There's solo mountaineers, there's solo sailors and solo kayakers.
Pushing yourself further and further. So we've gone through possible cons, now the pros. What is the beauty of it, and what are some of the beautiful things that you'll be experiencing?
I'm in love with the whole Kimberley region. The place is so big and so wild. It's there's so many different plants and animals that live out there, and I have the whole place to myself the whole time I'm out there. It's amazing. There's no fences, there's no aeroplanes flying over the top of you. The gorges are littered with some of the oldest recorded rock art in the world. It's just absolutely beautiful, pristine part of the world.
What I was going to say, Finey, too, Lachie, I've got like almost butterflies in my stomach from excitement to know that someone's capable of actually pulling something like this off. It entertains me just to think that, you know, one, I wish you well, but two, I just think it's so exciting to realise that somebody can actually accomplish something of this sort of magnitude.
Yeah. Well, there's no part of the puzzle I know I can't complete. So now I just got to put it all together. But yeah, I've had butterflies going to sleep for the last 6 months or so as well.
That's wonderful confidence to have. Amazing confidence.
Off our SMS, that sounds incredible. It does. He should be very proud of himself. Can't wait to see some footage. So as people look to chart your progress, where do they head?
You can head to my website, which is follow-the-river.com, and just click on latest. It's got all the details there, but there'll be links from the Outer Edge and Wild websites as well.
Certainly
so you can
will.
check them out.
Yep. We'll be covering Lachie's story live as he goes along the river, covering his progress. We'll bring up to date. I can give you an update as I come in here, finally, as long as it's not already finished with the water being so high. We're also going to feature the full story in Wild magazine, and in the next edition of Outer Edge, there's the previous story of the mission that Lachie led down the Fitzroy, which is coming out next week.
Paddy, we've covered some amazing expeditions and adventures on this segment, from circumnavigation of Australia to mountain climbing in extremely difficult conditions outside this continent, in the Antarctic expeditions. How does this rank for you? Because having stepped through it with you, and certainly not being an expert, this sounds as difficult or more challenging than most.
Oh, absolutely! This is a highest echelon, I'd say, of a venture, and it's thrilling to be here. Like we've had a bit to do with Lachie over the last year. Been very privileged to do so and cover some of his previous adventures, and it's great to spend a bit of time with him now, just before he heads off a week Tuesday on this particular mission.
Well, Lachie, we can only but wish you all the best and dip our lids to you again. We admire you. The SMSs are coming through. It's a marvellous achievement, and for a 22-year-old, good luck, and we look forward to speaking to you when you come back with all the stories.
Great, thanks very much.
All the best, buddy.
Lachie Carracher, outstanding.